Good night. Ancient Mahara here. To talk a little bit about a few of the major things that stop a lot of people who are in a relationship of any relationship type, but significant other partners, people with codependency, with people with untreated BPD. What holds a lot of people in these relationships when they already know they can't do it anymore, they can't take it anymore, is there's a few things. And one is some people think because or get all, wound up in worrying about, and when I say wound up, I don't mean like wound up emotionally, it's crazy. I mean really wrapped up in feeling guilty if you were to quote abandon the person with BPD. When to leave to take care of yourself is not abandoning them. And the other part of that is people say, well, but I've had a lot of clients say this. I think people have expressed it on the channel as well before. They'll say, well, but yeah, but she has BPD and that's, she can't help it or he can't help it. And, I feel so bad for them. I feel so sorry for them. And then if you add in what I'm talking about, which, at times is explaining how people with BPD often don't know. They're not doing what they're doing consciously often, a lot of it. The repetition compulsion cycles and that last video I did, the You Owe Me, which is a very primal thing from childhood that people with BPD carry with them, this attitude, etc. And so the bottom line is, you can do whatever you want. It's hard for people. They get blocked and stuck. So if you're trying to make the choice to leave, because you know that you want to, you know that you need to, if that's your situation. Lots of people are in this situation. Some people are just still really conflicted. But then you start thinking about, well, but they'll feel abandoned. Or, I don't want to abandon them. Then that would make me a bad person. A lot of people with codependency feel. And the other thing about this, well, they have a serious mental illness, as some people like to really dwell on, which it's really more about their childhood trauma, but whatever people call it. But some people then say, well, okay, so they got this mental illness, and to some degree, it's accurate to say they can't always help what they're doing. And so then people feel more actual, you could say sympathy or empathy or compassion, but some people just feel outright pity for the person. And this is easily drawn out of somebody with codependency. So then you're like, well, but if they had cancer or if they had MS or, people make these comparisons between the quote mental illness, the illness part, a BPD, which is not physical at all, and physical illness, right? Or a handicap. And they say, but if my husband or my wife or my girlfriend or my boyfriend, I've had clients say this to me, when they're just, they're in a quandary, because I'm not telling anybody what to do. And they'll be like, but why should I leave them just because they have untreated BPD? I'm putting in the word untreated, right, to emphasize. Because if they had cancer, should I leave them then? Or if they had MS or some other physical disability, for example, or a physical disability? Well, of course not. But BPD isn't that kind of a illness, right? BPD is really something that is, I know I don't have to tell you people out there, seriously impacting people, seriously traumatizing people. People are really getting abused and hurt, and there's so many moving parts to that, right? So there's that. Codependents face that, and the feelings of toxic guilt and or shame and or not knowing how they could possibly do this, or feeling bad they'll be abandoning their abuser, in essence. And then there's the other difficult reality of you feel like, many people feel, they're still in love with the person who they fell in love with that isn't really who the person with untreated BPD is. And so people go through this whether they can, break up and go no contact or not. Also whether, ghosted or discarded and then hoovered or reverse hoover or recycling around a relationship. whatever the case is, people with codependency are getting blocked in by the very fact they're codependent, but all of the difficulties that go with that. Like I said, the guilt, the comparing BPD as a, quote, mental illness to other illnesses, and, well, you wouldn't just abandon somebody. But see, people with other illnesses, physical illnesses, or a physical disability or something, they're not going to be abusing you while you're trying to, quote, rescue them. And so there's that. And then there's people who are literally terrified to break up with somebody with BPD because of suicidal threats, or perhaps they've attempted before. Some people are at higher risk. Some people will threaten it and there's a real risk, and some people threaten it and there isn't. But you can't know the difference. So there's a lot of people being held hostage in a relationship with somebody with untreated BPD, in which they're being very traumatized, very wounded, and they're not called trauma bonds for no reason. And so people get held hostage this way because they're so terrified. And, it's understandable in a lot of cases. So, but what I'm here to say about that is that people need to be able to make their own decisions and understand, and it's hard for people with codependency, that if you feel like you can't take it anymore and you need it to end, and or it's ended and been recycled or whatever the case, but then you're so worried about if they'll take their life or not. It's like, it is really terrifying. It is really, it's difficult. I mean, it makes it way more complex. And yet, you're not responsible, and I don't mean to sound cold or harsh with this, but you're not responsible for the life. Of course, none of us wants to see that happen. It happens actually all too frequently for a lot of people with BPD. And nobody wants to see that for anybody with BPD, let alone anybody in general, or someone that you have been in a relationship to, that you love, you may still feel love for, but they're not who you thought they were. So there's the emotional hostage taking in that situation. And that's really tough for people with codependency to break out of. And then there's a third prong to this, because I'm not going to go into all of the possible prongs right now in this video. But the third one that is really difficult, that holds a lot of people up when they know they need to leave, and they want to leave, and or not recycle around again, and or not answer another Hoover, and they want to go, or they've gone full no contact, or they want to go, or they're about to do it. Let me put it that way. And so what is this third prong sort of obstacle? Well, there's advocacy groups out there for people with BPD, right? They are advocating for the various, many and apparently multiple ways, not really, but that you can help the person with BPD in your life, that you can help the partner, the loved one, the girlfriend, the boyfriend, the husband, the wife with BPD. And so it's not only people with BPD that forward this idea, it's also professionals, it's professional websites, not all, but some, it's treatment center websites, it's advocacy websites, or maybe, I don't know, someone on YouTube is saying this, I have no idea. But so the message is, here's the 5 ways you can help the person with BPD, or whatever it is, on these various, and there's other websites out there too where people just write about this, professionals, a lot of them. So they're saying to people who are really traumatized, in the trauma bond and what all that means, who are getting to the end of the rope though, and really know that they don't want to recycle, they just can't recycle the relationship again, they don't want to get hoovered again, or if you haven't been ghosted or discarded, then you want to break up with the person with BPD. And this is for people who are in this space. Many people are still struggling and they're not sure what they want, and etc. But what can happen so often, it happens often, I've had a lot of clients talk about this over the years too, is that these advocacy groups and people with their codependency and the feelings of love and what the trauma bond entails, they really want to, try their best and keep trying to rescue and fix. And even when you know that you're kind of like, you can't do it anymore, you can't take anymore, you're too exhausted, that type of thing. Well, these advocacy groups, so people often will Google in, how can I help my borderline wife? How can I help my borderline husband, girlfriend, boyfriend? They'll Google it. And then this stuff pops up. And it's like, I'm here to just say for people, if you've struggled with this, or you're still struggling with it, in any kind of like, you need to break up, you want to break up, but you're struggling with this, or you're recycling a relationship, or you're trying to stay no contact, but you're not fully no contact, you're getting hoovered. All these different situations, sometimes at the weirdest times, or at times when people they really are so close to doing what they need to do for themselves, which is get out of the relationship or not allow yourself to be hoovered, go full no contact, then get into healing and recovery. They'll Google, like, out of desperation, really, wanting to, how can I help this person? Is there any way I could help the borderline? And various different things will show up, but so does all this, BPD narrative, but advocacy groups for people with BPD, and mental health probably advocacy, and mental health professional websites, and websites where mental health professionals are writing, and maybe amongst other people. And I've seen some of these out there, and they'll be like, here's some tips, or this is the way you can help the partner. But see, untreated, that's not going to work. It's just not going to work. And so I think a lot of those advocacy groups out there, a lot of those websites that talk about this for one reason or the other, wherever they're coming from, they are, I don't know if they take the time. No, they don't delineate it, So what they're talking about, they don't say if your partner is in therapy or has had X amount of therapy or substantial therapy. So actually, it's even a little bit worse than I thought for people who might run into this as an obstacle. Because they just say, if you Google that, it'll be like, yeah, here's some ways you can help the person with BPD who's your partner or whatever. And husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend. But they don't work. All those tips and tools in the world don't work if it's an untreated person. If they have no therapy, if they're not in therapy, if they're not kind of down that road in therapy, that's when some of that how to help the borderline could work if they're in significant treatment, but not in terms of rescue, fix, enable, try to change. But see, that would be about support. And support, there's never enough of that. It doesn't help people with BPD, right? Untreated. So this is another thing that keeps a lot of people stuck in the cycles, in denial, and because they'll Google this, they'll see this somewhere, and they're like, but there has to be a way to help these people and help this partner of mine or help this person. And even, clients over the years and lots of comments on this channel say, but there has to be a way that I can reach back. And it happens a lot on live streams. People say, I've been no contact for a year. I've been no contact for several months, maybe 2 years. But I just want to reach out to let him or her know that they might have BPD and they should check into that. It's like, see, this is part of the codependency, and it's very difficult after these relationships end, however they end, to do the no full contact, as I mentioned in a video before, because people with codependency don't have these kind of boundaries, right? But so there are different roadblocks that get people who kind of know they need to not recycle again, not let a Hoover happen again, or respond to that, or break up with the person if they're still there. Because a lot of people with BPD don't ghost or discard. And then they'll see something like these tips to help, or there must be another way I can help. And And it's such self-abandonment. So the trauma bond and the reality of the pain and the agony that so many people who've been in or are exes now but haven't got to full no contact or still have a BPD husband or wife, so many of them are just blocked by over-rationalization, the trauma bond reality of it all, advocacy groups saying, but you can help them, you should help them. What's the matter with you if you don't help them? Because people with codependency have enough toxic guilt and shame. And they're going to they feel bad enough at the thought that they could do something for themselves. This is how formidable codependency really can be and is for a lot of people. So not everybody has severe codependency, right? There's gradations there. But for some people, it is that severe. And so but they have a mental illness and they can't help it. And I don't want to abandon them narrative, and then there's but if it was like a physical handicap or a different illness, I wouldn't, quote, abandon them, unquote. Meanwhile, this is somebody who's untreated with BPD who's abusing you. And then there's the advocacy groups. Well, you can help them, and it doesn't work with untreated people with BPD. It just flat out doesn't. And then there's but I love this person so much, and I mean that seriously. I'm not mocking or judging. Because the trauma-bonded reality for so many people with codependency is you do keep feeling love for this person, even though they're not who you thought they were. And then for people with codependency, you have to realize that's not healthy love, right? But then after people go, so first it's getting to no contact in all these scenarios, getting past those blockages. And of course, the ones who are threatening suicide, who may well be at risk of doing it, who've attempted before. I mean, I had a partner with quiet BPD, and in a conversation when I was trying to break up with her, she became homicidal and suicidal. Left a room in a rage. Yeah, quiet BPDs can rage at times, and especially at certain times. And I didn't know what was going on. Came back into the room with a weapon and wanted to take me with her. Long story short, she took her life. And I was 7 minutes into a conversation of exploring that maybe we needed to break up. And so is that a real fear? Is that a real way that people are held emotionally hostage? Oh, yes. And I didn't even have that fear at that point in time because I just wasn't as aware as I probably should have been. Absolutely. But, I was in the same room with that person when they were doing, what they were doing, and it was horrific. And I could not save them. So this is a hard fact on that obstacle that is blocking a lot of people. So when it comes to that, again, it's like none of us want to see that happen to anybody. But you can't keep abandoning yourself to be between the person with untreated BPD and the bottom. And the hope is that the bottom isn't that, but for some people it is. And then, of course, if you can do anything about it, and you knew, or you would. But the fact is we can't take responsibility for anybody else's life. And I say that as somebody who is the survivor of somebody who took their life, committed suicide. And so there's that. And that's a super heavy duty one. But they're all, I'm not saying equal, but obstacles. And then there is but I still love him or her. And people with codependency seem to, and really what that's about is you're still really invested in getting the him or her back that you thought they were, right? You're interested in getting that person back when that person never really existed. So what does that, I want to say very gently, what does that then mean about your love for that person? Like, who are you loving exactly? And so it's mind-boggling and complex, and the trauma bond and BPD abuse is real, and especially with untreated borderlines. So people have to realize that there's these obstacles, and reasons why people will try to rationalize, try over and over again. And the message here is that one of the biggest parts of this message, besides the being taken hostage to the potential of suicide on the part of the BPD that you need to be the ex of, or that you might be, is that you can't take responsibility for anybody else's life, and you are abandoning yourself while doing so. And I just want to say, it's everybody's worst nightmare, and it happened to me. And I was in the same room with the person and could not save them. This is what we really have to come to terms with. And it's about boundaries too. It's horrible. I have no words. But the reality is, whether it's an advocacy group and you're thinking, well, but there's this suggestion and that suggestion, and I just need to try harder, and, well, but it's an illness and it can't help it, and like I wouldn't leave somebody who had cancer or a physical handicap or a handicap of some sort or some other illness. There's just people, it's so hard for people with codependency, some more so than others, because all these rationalizations, some more compelling than others, obviously, and the trauma bond of it all, and like trying to get that person back who you thought they were. All of this really is so complex. And yet, what codependents really struggle with, many people with codependency, the more severe they have codependency, the longer the relationship with the untreated borderline, the more they're going to struggle with the reality that they are worth, so you are worth, doing what feels impossible to do, going no contact, full no contact, and then getting into therapy ASAP. Because people try to learn more. People try to get ready. I've had people say, I'm just not ready. And I've seen it in live streams too, not just clients. I'm just not ready to go full no contact yet. I just can't. Well, that blocks people's healing and recovery. And people lose themselves to the untreated borderline abuse. You can really have severe impact to your mental health, to your physical health. So there are these blocks out there that maybe aren't talked about enough, that I'm sure lots of people are aware of, but not everybody's going to come up against the same, roadblocks. But being held hostage with worry when somebody keeps threatening suicide and or they have attempted is a huge one, for sure. But you still have to know that you can't take responsibility for their life. And that might sound really harsh. I don't mean it that way. You need to take responsibility for your life. And you need to take care of yourself. And for people with codependency, it might seem like what I'm saying right now, for a lot of people, is like, it's obvious, right? But not in these trauma-bonded relationships, and not with people with codependency. And it's in these trauma-bonded relationships with the untreated borderline that people find out they're codependent, because there's such huge a trigger in all of that trauma and the abuse and the chaos and the confusion that awakens pain that's been suppressed in the subconscious prior. As you know, there's so many moving parts of this, and it's very complex. But I just wanted to say to anyone out there, if you are in any of these blocked, stuck places of, thinking still you can try again because some website you could help them by doing this, that, the other thing, worrying about if they'll take their life or not, feeling held hostage to that, while still loving them, even though they're not who you actually love. So who are you loving? And, these various, and the advocacy groups who say, but you can help them. And the reality that people with codependency have spent the better part of their entire lives focused on someone else, externalizing out to try to get needs met. So there's some, and the other is that, but they have an illness and like I can't abandon them, right? These are just a few of the big traps that a lot of people with codependency really aren't able to overcome to be able to stop recycling, stop the hoovering, reverse hoovering, recycling, or break up with the person with BPD if they're in fact, many people with BPD don't ghost, don't discard. So it's compelling and it's complex, but I just wanted to put this out for people that might be experiencing one. I think I said 4 or 5 things there, I'm not sure. One of those 4 or 5 things, or 2 or 3 of them, it's really compelling. And so sometimes focusing on the fact that BPD is known as a mental illness, that illness factor of, well, they can't help it, because there's no excuse for that anyway, right? What they do, how they hurt people, that keeps a lot of people stuck, as do the other things I've mentioned. And I think for many people, it's the emotional being held hostage situation, the worry if they'll survive. And for a lot more people too, it's advocacy groups. It's what you're going to Google out there. And then there's one other big thing that I should summarize and close with here, which is that people with codependency just feel like it's their responsibility, right? Just maybe don't want to be alone, just a lot of things about what codependency really is and means and how it blocks people, that they just don't. It's a trauma bond too, and it becomes an addiction. And it's like, for many people, there's that addictive quality, and then more for some people than others. And so, and the repetition compulsions also for people with more severe codependency can very much involve that you had an untreated BPD mother, for example, or father, or some people have an untreated BPD mother and a narcissistic father, or one parent with cluster B untreated and the other is a very severe codependent. So it's another huge part of the fact that people, the wounded inner child deep in your unconscious is driving you forward. And this is why so many people, even if they break up with one person with BPD, they'll try to go into another relationship too soon. They'll find another cluster B, whether it's a BPD or an NPD, because there's just this, there's the inner child, the wounded inner child aspect deep in the unconscious that is still seeking the same familiarity, unbeknownst to you in your consciousness, your conscious mind, seeking the same familiarity as it was in childhood with a parent. And it doesn't always mean that parent was a cluster B. But this is really, it's just really all heavy-duty reasons why people struggle extra hard, plus the reality that people with codependency don't have, it's hard for them to set boundaries. Hard for you, right? Hard for so many people. And then even if you go no contact, what I'm trying to say here is it feels impossible for many people. And then the people that are saying that they are, I'm not ready yet to go full no contact. Well, it means that even though you've come away, you're still not ready yet to let go of the love you feel for the person who is non-existent, really, at this point in time. So there's all of these obstacles and more, and it's really complex and compelling. But if you can resonate with anything I've said here, or if you are an ex right now and you are in no contact, and you're really struggling with that, and you're still ruminating, and you're still obsessing, and and a lot of time's gone by, and you're like hard on yourself. Well, it takes quite a while. And really, I advocate strongly, I'm out here to work with you if I resonate with you, but you need to work with somebody. And the other thing, too, is that people just don't have enough sense of self-worth to choose self. And so in this no contact, or not ready to be no contact, you see, what codependents really need to do, and I'll wrap up with this, is you need to do what feels impossible to do, right? You need to take that action that feels next to impossible to take. So you you get out of the relationship cycle, you just go full no contact. And if children are involved, it's going to be different and more complex. But you go as full of no contact as you can, and if there's no children, full no contact. And then with that, yes, you're going to be in a world of hurt. It's going to be very agonizing. It will feel impossible. People really super suffer with this, and it's very severe and real. And anyone who hasn't been through it does not understand it. But you need to go full no contact first so you can make a pathway for yourself to therapy, to be able to learn to cope with everything you need to cope with and start your healing and recovery journey. Because when people are recycling relationships, you're not on a healing journey. And when people are not full no contact, when people stay in contact with an ex, there was someone on live stream the other night, just has been in contact with the ex, met someone new 2 years later, but is weighed down by the dependency of the ex with BPD on them, and they can't really move forward without breaking the contact with the ex. And it's not all about moving forward to the next relationship, because more importantly, it's about ending a trauma bond, which is very difficult, getting into therapy, working on codependency, the family origin work, all that, plus healing from the relationship, finding your own closure, which I help clients to do. And then it's about, for people with codependency, building, creating a healthy, functional relationship to and with yourself. Becoming your own best friend instead of being your own worst enemy, which is what happens for people with codependency. Why have you been abandoning and running from yourself for so long? Because there's pain that awaits you when you turn into yourself, like turn into facing your life, yourself, your healing, your recovery, all of which you really deserve to do and need to do for yourself. You have only agency and control over yourself to make change, to choose therapy, to heal and to grow. So people that don't go full no contact are keeping themselves stuck in a place of ever ramping up incredible, adding to their suffering because it feels impossible to just go no contact for so many people. So really, it's a time when you need to follow your head, not your heart. And it's a time when you need to know what you need to do and take action on it when you know this, right? And then work on the answering the question why and figuring out more and your healing and recovery. It doesn't work in reverse, because people who are still in contact, or if you're recycling, or all of the, these types of things, then you're going to keep yourself stuck and blocked from, you can start recovery, but you're going to largely be stuck and blocked from getting really where you need to go on that recovery journey. So those are just some of the bigger obstacles, and a couple of them really compelling, but it's all compelling for people with codependency, because at the end of the day, no matter what the reasons, the rationality, the fears, your greatest fear is, how do you stop abandoning yourself? And for a lot of people with codependency, the next question, if they were aware of it, would be, why don't I feel like I'm worth it? So I hope that was helpful. Maybe food for thought. Maybe some people that are in that tenuous position, you're just full no contact, or you're just reasonably no contact. You're trying to get to full no contact. And, but maybe you just got maybe you just got hoovered. Maybe you're in the middle of a recycle that you realize the relationship is going to break up again. You're going to get ghosted again, whatever the pattern is. And you're struggling mightily with this. What is the healthiest thing to do? And even if you can't go no contact first, then get in therapy to work with someone to help you, because I help clients with that too. Strategize around that, work it through, talk it out, process it, and then get that boundary in place. So wherever you are today with this, and you might be an ex, still ruminating, still struggling, just know this is a formidable type of breakup, as with people who break up with narcissists or get discarded by them, that is unique to these trauma bonded relationships. And so often people's friends and family and people that really care about you, they're like, what are you still talking about that? What's the matter with you? Because they don't understand. So make sure that you start working with somebody who does and can help you, because so many people know they need out of the cycle, but it feels impossible. So how do you take the action that feels impossible to be able to get to the next step? Take care.